10 minutes, yeah. I'll take 6 to 8 minutes. I'll try to focus on two things because since morning you have been listening about this. This is an interesting area and a very burning topic, in fact. I think you have discussed thoroughly, but I'll focus on climate finance from two angles. The title is Economic Aspects of Climate Change Mitigation and Adaptation. For the sake of my convenience and even keeping in view of the youngsters, I would like to spell out certain things. Please bear with the inconvenience. There is a triple environmental crisis, that is climate change, biodiversity loss and pollution, which are interlinked and intricately related. And therefore, we need a multi-pronged approach for addressing these issues, for which we need climate finance. In fact, I'm trying to establish why climate finance is needed. You might have discussed about what it is, how it is, what is the extent, incidence, and so on. Now, there are two things. How do we really mobilize resources for climate action? And finally, ensure climate justice. While trying to mobilize resources for climate action, we had hiccups, we had many problems. Just now we have seen the target was $100 billion, but we were able to mobilize only $85 billion. So, but there is a study which says that we need $1.5 trillion to $4.8 trillion per year. But we are talking about only billions. Even those billions were not able to mobilize. And the polluter pays principle is there, but we were not able to make them to pay for this. And even when I was going through literature, I was really shocked to see that the drafts pertaining to loss and damage prepared by the concerned committee was objected by USA. Secondly, Europe did not say anything on it. These are the two main players who did not really come forward to lend something, leave alone trillions or billions. So, we know that there is a triple environmental crisis. So, for a minute, what is climate change? We have been talking from morning, but let me give you clarity. Climate change refers to long-term shifts in temperatures and weather patterns. Though these are natural, these shifts may be natural, but since 1800s, human activities have been the main driver of climate change, primarily due to the burning of fossil fuels, which produce heat-trapping gases. Having said what is climate change, now I would like to come to COP28, which has 4 clear main themes on which it is going to discuss and come out with some kind of solutions or resolutions, whatever it is. One area that they have chosen is technology and innovation, and in which they will be discussing about what kind of technology that they are going to use to address the climate change and its negative impacts, inclusion and frontline communities, and finance. When we say finance, it is climate finance. We can talk many things about those three, but unless there is finance, we cannot do anything. Therefore, money is needed, we need resources. Unless we are able to procure money, we will not be able to do anything. Therefore, let us focus on this. My presentation is on only two aspects. What is loss and damage, how it has been defined. Secondly, what is really happening to create a fund for this loss and damage fund. See, there was a committee meeting which was held recently, just prior to the COP28. They were saying that it is called Transitional Committee. Transitional Committee, which was assigned the task of determining which country, which institution will hold the fund that is mobilized from all. Hosting fund, which is crucial. Secondly, other nitty-gritty. And there is a suggestion by Finland and South Africa that let it be with World Bank. And many people opposed it. We know pretty well from CSOs. World Bank has its own mandate. It's a business organization. Its business model is something different from this. So many people are opposing. And secondly, the kind of host the nature of host is such that they will see everything from business perspective. As a result, what will happen is that the countries which need the finance will not be able to get it. That is going to happen, and there is no place for space for CSFOs. So briefly, what is loss and damage? There is no concrete definition from the UN side what is loss and damage. It is a general term which has been discussed again and again in UN climate negotiations, meaning that it is the consequence of climate change. But they are not defined yet. Similarly, meeting after meeting, COP after COP is going on, happening, but they are not able to define what is loss and damage. Leave this alone, but we were talking about climate finance. In COP27, 26, we discussed thoroughly, but even today, what is climate finance is not really defined. What is the methodology? Who will contribute? How it is reported? What are the reporting mechanisms? Who will keep this money? Who will access these resources? Who are eligible? How will they obtain this funding? So I will give you some of the examples which are really shocking. The developed countries told that you can't use these terms. Liability. A word called liability has been used in the draft text prepared by the transitional committee, which is trying to create a structure institution for keeping that fund. So they say that you can't use this word. We are not liable. You can't make it legally liable. They are objecting, USA. And one fact is that US defense is contributing to these emissions, carbon emissions, so many times higher than all these put together. Many people may not be knowing that what kind of amount of emissions are released by the US defense is something really worrisome. What counts as loss and damage? These are all the questions which need to be discussed and thoroughly answered in the coming COP28. Otherwise, we cannot get clarity, and it will be in, a vacuum. Another COP, yeah. And they will be buying time, and the vulnerable, poor and vulnerable countries will be looking at fund which will come, we don't know. What is the difference between mitigation, adaptation, and addressing loss and damage? Yeah, 2 minutes. What is the history of loss and damage? If you look at the history of loss and damage, it is 3 decades old, but still we are not able to really define what it is. Is loss and damage an issue of liability and compensation? When these two words, liability and compensation, were included in the text draft, they objected, saying that you replace them with cooperation and facilitation, not these words. What are some possible sources of funding for addressing loss and damage? So they say that we can lend money in terms of humanitarian aid, disaster risk management, and insurance, but not legally, but not as something, we need to contribute. Yeah, not as a responsibility. Yeah, they are ignoring shared responsibility, which we have been talking in all international. Yes. What activities could loss and damage fund support? Some examples are given: weather indexed crop insurance for farmers, rebuild critical infrastructure when disaster strikes, and so on. And that also they are dictating. They are saying that we will only lend money for these activities, but not for these. What needs to happen next to address loss and damage? And this committee has been assigned the task of deciding on concrete details of loss and damage funding arrangements, which is doing it, but they are not accepting it. Let's see what will happen. So now our point is that we need to pressurize the people responsible for this at COP28. First of all, it should be defined. What is loss and damage has to be defined. And secondly, a fund has to be created. It should be kept as a standalone entity, and the fund should be kept with a standalone entity, but not with the World Bank, because there are some objections. And what is climate finance? We know all these things. Coming to the, this and all we have discussed. I would like to throw some light on Government of India's efforts, because it's not doing anything. We have been saying not doing anything, but it has started doing something. Let's look at this. India stands fourth globally in renewable energy installed capacity, fourth in wind power capacity, fourth in solar power capacity. Already achieved 40% installed electric capacity from non-fossil fuels. There is evidence for it. 1,000 plus gigawatts renewable energy potential in India. 160 gigawatts installed renewable energy capacity against the target of 500 gigawatts by 2030 has been achieved. Therefore, we are saying 40% share in total installed capacity is achieved. And these are the disaggregated details of it. Yeah, done. Coming. And one important thing is that sovereign green bonds have been issued by the Government of India. We have been able to mobilize $980 million once, again $968 million second time. So 2 tranches have been released, and the Government of India has been able to mobilize money to the tune of something around $2,000 million. It's a good beginning. These are all we know. And the global stock take report has come out, we have discussed. And L&D fund host, 1 minute, please. Yeah, this transitional committee, which is assigned the task of creating an institution for keeping the funding, has 24 members. This will be finalized in the COP28, and I think 26 members, 12 from developed countries, 14 from developing countries. Draft deal will be sent for adoption in COP28, while the US made minute objections for the finalization, saying that we'll come with our recommendations in COP28. Please hang on. They say that keeping in abeyance. Fund temporarily hosted by the World Bank for 4 years and reviewed later. And 4 years is a long time. And I don't know why Finland and South Africa named World Bank to be the hosting agency, and the hosting fee is 17%. Because they are hosting and looking after all these transactions, they charge 17%, which is something gigantic. Developing country partners opine that standalone independent fund directly under UNFCCC following principles of equitable climate action is appropriate. Because if it is World Bank, they will not listen to us. There are conditions which are mentioned given to the World Bank, and it is given 6 months to agree or disagree. To go through those conditionalities and say, yes, I agree or disagree, World Bank is given 6 months. And by the time we create that hosting agency, it will be 1 year, one more COP. World Bank is a multilateral development bank, shareholder and contributor driven, and majority shareholding by developing countries with a hosting fee of 17%. And its business model is driven by loans, which is against the climate justice or action. So I would like to say one thing. Climate finance means it should be a grant. There should not be any loan. Neither loan nor concessional loan, nothing. It should be only a grant. Otherwise, the poor and vulnerable countries will be put to loss. It is like twice alienated. Once they are, for want of no reason, they are suffering from all these. Now you are giving them loan, making business, and they need to repay, which they cannot be.
How it is spent.
Yes. So last. No membership for CSOs or the communities in the board of fund. And despite our advocacy and lobbying, people like Narsim Reddy sir is not getting space in this board. I mean to say CSOs. World Bank should agree to granting the board autonomy to choose executive director, and funds on policies supersede World Bank's all developing countries to directly access resources from the fund, including through subnational, national, and regional entities. We mean to say that once institution is created, it should be able to, available for the poor and vulnerable people, not only at the national level, but also at the subnational level. The local governments should be able to access funding. Look at the NDB. So like that, the bank or funding agency should be able to, provide money to these people or grants to these people so that they can address the issues. Finally, who will donate to the fund and by how much? Still it is hanging on. It is not yet decided. Who will donate to the fund and by how much? Eligibility criteria for recipients. Even today, no criteria has been defined. Finally, the transitional committee draft text says wide variety of sources of funding, including grants and concessional loans from public, private, and innovative sources. So, loan is a dangerous term. Only grant, grant, grant. Unless the developed countries who are the perpetrators of this particular violence commit to contribute to climate finance, we will not be able to do anything. Therefore, we all should put pressure on the authorities at COP28. Rather, what we can do is we can prepare a letter and send it to them, our recommendations of the one-day workshop. Thank you.